Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, so it is Saturday, and I'm sure that most of you guys are like surprised to see us on Facebook Live with Totally Naked on Saturday because we generally are on Sunday. But we have a treat for you guys. We have a special treat for you guys today, and so we're gonna wait for some people to kind of join on. But we have Dr.
Yes.
Omar Dominique Pierre, Dr. Omar Pierre Dominique is here, and he's actually going to talk to us a little bit about these COVID vaccinations. And so we're going to just wait a little bit. I'm so glad that you guys have joined us this Saturday morning. We want you guys in this conversation. Like, this is like one of those
Yes.
rare opportunities where we actually are live, but we also have a medical physician. This is not like, he's not a psychologist, he's not a psychiatrist. He's not like the homeboy that knows a lot about medicine. He really is a medical doctor, and
Right.
you have an opportunity to like put your comments in, ask some questions, any burning questions that you may have. We would want you to be able to put those into the chat. And Dominique, if you could, whenever those pop up, when the opportunity presents, we'll see if we can answer some questions toward the end of this conversation. But we really want to unpack. We want to unpack this thing about these COVID vaccinations. We
Right.
actually had Dr. Omar come on the show last year when this whole pandemic kind of hit the fan for us in April. And Dr. Omar kind of talked to us about what COVID was. And so we're going to have Dr. Omar talk to us a little bit more about this vaccination that's coming out. The vaccination has not been released to the general public as of yet. But it's definitely something that we can look forward to in 2021. And so we want to make sure you guys are informed, that you have all the facts, that you have the information. And so as we continue to allow some people to just come on in, we're going to wait a little bit because we really want to inform everybody that's a part of our team that's been rocking with Totally Naked. So we want you guys to have this information. We think it's going to be very beneficial. Woo! We got Jax, brother Jax.
Woo, 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 woo.
How are you? Y'all are crazy. Hey, how are you guys doing? How you doing, Dr. O?
Hey, I'm doing well. Pleasure, man.
Good, good. I'm good.
Yeah, you know what, Jax, as you can see, because Jax normally he'll have his face on here. He'll be talking with us, but Jax is like actually going to the doctor today. So Jax couldn't be with us in physical form, but he's still here on audio. So going to the doctor is a good thing.
Absolutely.
A great
Man.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go
You
to
better
the doctor.
go.
Yeah, going to the doctor is a good thing. And so I don't know, y'all, you want to go ahead and get this thing started?
Yeah, let's kick this thing off.
All right. And so thank you guys so much again. I'm April from Totally Naked. I have my co-host here, Dominique. I have Robert Jackson, and we have our distinguished guest, Dr. Omar Dominique, who is here. He is a medical physician. He is not a person who we have not talked to before. And so he is going to help us unpack this COVID vaccination and get rid of some of these mistruths. And so let's welcome Dr. O to the platform today.
Woo! Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Dr. O,
Thank
before
you.
we get started with our and getting into this conversation, can you tell us a little bit about, yourself and your role and the type of patients you're seeing right now?
Yeah, sure. I'm primarily a hospital-based physician, and actually I'm a travel physician. So I've had the opportunity to work in a number of different states since COVID, first hit our front doors, particularly about 4 different states. And so I've seen quite diverse populations contracted with COVID, various cultural settings, and of course, age groups. And the COVID unit has really been my primary source of providing care, although we have been admitting non-COVID patients, but by and large, 60-70% of my hospital practice has been COVID-related care over the last 7 or 8 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like? Because I think that that's important, especially for those who may haven't been to the hospital or don't know
Mhm.
anyone who may have contracted COVID, like what
Yeah.
that looks like when you're in the hospital.
So, of course, by the time they get to me, they are pretty sick. Um, so essentially, we have a kind of a triage as it relates to any reason why someone would come to the hospital. But as it relates even specifically to COVID, there is a what we call it admission to the hospital criteria, because they are a small percentage of COVID positive patients that we are actually able to see and treat in the emergency department and then send home. And so by the time they see me, it's because they have not passed that criteria to be discharged home safely, and they warrant admission into the hospital. So typically, how they present by the time I see them is, extremely short of breath, requiring some form of supplemental oxygen. Now, we have different forms and ways that we deliver oxygen therapy, but usually they have an oxygen requirement, whereas in a normal setting, healthy individual, they wouldn't require oxygen. So if they are requiring oxygen to the point where it's needed to sustain their oxygen saturation, and what I mean by that is, um, you know, a healthy individual should have an oxygen saturation somewhere in the 90% range. And so these patients usually are presenting at rest, without any exertion or movement, with oxygen saturations below that 90% threshold, and therefore warrant oxygen therapy. In that manner, they warrant hospital admission.
Okay. Yeah, so Dr. O is like working with the patients who are like at their sickest point. I don't know if you guys know, but I also work with in the medical field. I work as an occupational therapist, and so I have been working on the COVID unit intermittently as the cases rise. And so right now we've had a peak here in Florida of patients with the diagnosis of COVID, and so we've had to open up another wing for COVID unit patients as well. And so by the time they have been cleared from Dr. Omar or from the acute setting or hospital setting, I would see them. Okay. And so some of the things that I'm seeing on our COVID unit, the patients are still having some shortness of breath and distress with their breathing. But from a rehab standpoint, working with them on being able to be able to tolerate activity. A lot of times the patients are coming in. One of the things that we're battling a lot is patients' fatigue levels and people not wanting to get out of the bed. And unfortunately, because of the way our lungs are set up and the way our body and our anatomy is set up, when we're laying in bed and just laying flat, that does not help you produce a cough or produce to get that the phlegm and all those other things. I don't want to be too technical here, but just so you know that getting patients up, getting them moving is one of the goals that that I have while working with patients who have COVID. And so it's not nothing to play with. It's one of those things. I've seen people die, you know, and I'm sure Dr. O can attest to this as well. When you're working with someone, you're really seeing, you really, as medical professionals, you want people to leave. You want them to go home. And so sometimes everyone doesn't go home. And it's not the best feeling as a medical professional to have to go through that. And so I think that that's why this conversation is so important, because yes, we have this deadly disease that's out here, and it seems like we were here almost a year ago, and we thought that this hopefully would have been over, but we're still here. And as we move into 2021, we have some good information. There's now a vaccination that has been introduced and is being administered to the general public. And so we kind of, I know that in my role, I've heard it several times, like, I ain't getting that vaccination. Like, I'm not doing it. I don't want it. They trying to, the government, a lot of different reasons why people have said, I'm just not getting it. And so by having Dr. O on here, I kind of wanted to talk about why are people so afraid? Why do you think people are so afraid to get this vaccination? And we can all kind of join in on this conversation, but we'll let Dr. O lead.
So I think the fears may be multifactorial. I think one spawns from the fear that the anti-vaccination movement has kind of put out about pretty much all the vaccines, and that they cause more harmful benefits or harmful risk, I would say, than they do good, and that there is some form of government-related genetic material inside the vaccines, and so that kind of fear mongering has been around even before the COVID vaccine was introduced. But then I think on top of that, the COVID vaccine has kind of caused a whole new movement of the 5G conspiracy theorists, as well as people who feel as though the vaccination was rushed. And that typically a vaccine trial usually takes 6 to 10 years, and the fact that we were able to roll this vaccination out for emergency use purposes over a 9-month period has a lot of people stoked, as to maybe the scientists maybe missed a step or so, and they're not willing to take that risk.
Oh, wow. Okay. So he unpacked that thing. Dominique, how about you? Why do you think that they're afraid?
Sorry, y'all, I was on the mute. But because I am not against medical science, and I'm definitely not against any vaccines. I have all of my vaccinations. I get the flu vaccination every single year, so I am not against vaccination. But I have to say that I am a part of the group that feels that this was a little bit rushed for political reasons, for economy reasons, whatever. I don't, and I think that with anything, we're humans, and we do make mistakes. And if we are rushing something, I do have to admit that I do have a concern that, when you do rush things, and we have seen in the news that the administration at the time was not necessarily listening to their medical advisors and listening to the people on their team giving them sound advice. They were not listening. So, that does give me concern, and that does give me pause. On top of it could possibly be propaganda of people getting sick after taking the vaccination and or have passed away after receiving the vaccination, on top of already being concerned that the government lied to me. I feel like the government just cheated on me. They did me so wrong through this process. So those things compiled on top of each other does give me grave concern in terms of taking it, and then you hear about new strands, and then that gives me additional concern, as if is the vaccine going to be sufficient for new strands that are coming out. So those are some of the concerns I have myself. But it's not that I doubt the science behind it or that I'm anti-vaccine, because I'm not. It's just the way that this has transpired has given me some pause.
Jax?
Hey, so Dr. O said something just now that typically it takes 6 to 10 years for a vaccine to be developed and everything. And so if you're telling me that a virus can come out in 2019 and at the beginning of 2021 there's a vaccine, that's automatically going to give me pause, because not feeding into all of the societal propaganda, but something that typically takes 6 to 10 years takes less than 2, would tell me that maybe the whole thing might not be as real as the government makes it out to be, because maybe this vaccine was already in the works prior to people knowing about uh, the uh, the disastrous effects of the virus. It's a whole rabbit hole to go down, because it's like an economic thing. It's like a money grab. It's like a fear mongering thing. It's all kind of issues that could possibly, not saying that I believe them all, but it's all kind of issues that could possibly come up that says this isn't as real as everybody makes it out to be. Now, my thing is, you guys in the medical field, and you see these sick people day in and day out, you have a totally different visual of how the virus is attacking and killing people. But the regular people who, not regular, but the people who maybe haven't seen it up close and personal, we don't have that same line of sight. Does that make sense? All we see is numbers and check marks going up every single day. But if it's not directly affecting us, and then all of a sudden something that is supposed to help us comes out in less than 2 years, that's supposed to take 3 times that time frame in order to develop, it just seems kind of fishy a little bit.
Dr. O, okay, so I have to say this, like, so Dr. O was one of the people who I reached out to with trying to understand that time frame thing, because that was a fear for me, even with me working with patients who have COVID and saying, it's like, you know what, I'm gonna just do the stuff that I can control. I'm gonna wear an N95 mask. I'm going to wear face shields. I'm going to make sure I'm washing my hands. I'm gonna just do the things I can control. And I'm gonna be just like, what Dominique said. I'm gonna just kind of watch. I'm gonna let those other people take the vaccination first.
Yes,
and then see. But I did reach out to Dr. O.
Just like a new version of an iPhone. That's right. Let them go out there and get that first.
Yeah. And then I'll go after the first round has gone. I'll go after the first round of people who have successfully made it through. Okay.
Yeah. So, but like Dr. O, like maybe you can answer that, because like Dr. O had gave me some, I felt like was like some sound advice about like why the science or why it works, because that was the question I had, even because I work in the medical field. I'm like, I know about the studies. I ain't gonna be a part of the study. So can you talk to us about it?
Yeah, so I do I understand the concerns both from Jackson and Dominique there. And those are real concerns and questions I think you should be asking. The best that I could, to my knowledge, is that what I would say to you is I think one of the reasons why we're seeing this vaccine being administered in the short time frame that it has is that as opposed to all of the other vaccinations that we've worked on, from smallpox to yellow fever to even the herpes virus, we've not seen the number of fatalities from those viruses that would prompt us to move as urgently as we did with COVID-19. So I think we have to think about the urgency about this thing. And so there was definitely a risk benefit that took part in these trials and it being approved for emergency use. And so what was decided is that from the subjects that were in both of these trials, and this is the trial with Moderna as well as Pfizer BioNTech, is that the number of subjects that were involved in this trial, the ones who, it was a double-blind study, and the ones who actually received the vaccine versus the ones who received the placebo, in that short period of time, they did see effective results of non-infectivity from those who actually received the vaccination. That's one thing. The second part is that what I was explaining to April before she received her first dose is that this technology using the mRNA spike protein is something that researchers have been working on for years, but this was really the first time it was actually introduced into a vaccine. And so the scientists really know how to work with the mRNA. They just hadn't necessarily had ever a time ever before that it was urgent enough that they needed to put it to use. And so one satisfying thing I can say about the both of the vaccinations that are out now is that um, I can guarantee you that the COVID-19 virus is not being injected into the body. And so it literally is only a piece of the outside of the virus, a small little piece of genetic material that's being introduced into the body when you get that shot. But there's no part of the actual body of that virus that's going inside your body when you get the vaccine. And so that's what I use to kind of encourage patients to let them know that it's just impossible for you to get sick from something like this because there's no part of the actual virus that's going in. It literally is just the outside coating. And that's the part that the body is recognizing to launch an immune response from. But the take home, I think, is the urgency. And so to answer your question about why this was rushed, why we didn't take 6 to 10 years from this is because it would have probably meant another 600 to maybe even 1 million people dying. And so the urgency caused this to come out well before some of the other vaccinations.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
Yes,
And
that
I
was
think that, and yeah, Dr. O was like, so Dr. O told me, and then like another physician who was the medical director at my facility spouted out the same exact information. And, you know, like it was the science that he talked about. And so Dr. O mentioned that I did get the first, look, I'm like coughing and stuff while I'm saying it. I'm all right. I'm safe. I'm okay. But
okay. Tell me something, April.
The first dose. No. But so I have to ask, you know, like Dr. O, like you got the vaccination. Like, what are some of the side effects could you expect from the vaccination? Like that, I know it's a 2-part series, but what can they expect?
Yeah. Really, I would say expect no symptoms whatsoever. To maybe some mild soreness in the arm that was injected. Maybe a little fatigue. In fact, I've got plenty of colleagues that have taken the vaccination and nobody really felt anything. Most I had was a little soreness around the arm, lasts about 2 days or so. Something you can take Tylenol for. Maybe a little fatigue, low grade fever. That's about the most that you should expect, if anything at all. And other than that, I mean, unless you're someone who's had major allergies to previous vaccinations, I would say be on guard, and maybe, and that may be one category of the population I would say maybe you should stay away from getting that vaccine, is if you've had a major anaphylactic reaction to the previous flu vaccination or some other form of vaccination or MMR or whatever. That maybe there's some part of the way that we coat vaccines, because all vaccines are coated. It's a protective coating around it so that when that vaccination is injected into the body, it doesn't degrade it immediately. Because I mean, ideally for all of us who have, good, robust immune systems, when a foreign body enters the system, whether it goes in through intramuscularly or IV, there's an immediate response. Like your body knows right away, that's not supposed to be in me. And so it will send some cells there and go and destroy it immediately. That's just the way God designed us. And so there's a protective coating that they put around these vaccinations so that the body doesn't immediately destroy it, so that it even has time to get to the proper immune cells that it needs to launch that memory against it. So occasionally people will have allergic reactions to even the protective coating that are in these vaccinations. But outside of that, I wouldn't expect to see really any side effects or adverse effects.
Yeah, my side effects were exactly what he said, the low grade fever, which I didn't even take anti-inflammatory for. I've been doing what I've been doing, which is the things I control, like taking zinc, taking vitamin C. Like I did that because like my body, it's my immunity that's going to help me fight or like defend against any foreign body that comes into, my body. And so I also had the soreness of arm. Now, when he was saying mild soreness, there were people like my coworkers and myself, we worked, like when we pulling on people, like for a minute, it felt like I couldn't lift my arm up. Like I had to do some range of motion exercises. I'm just saying, it ain't mild. It was like,
that's not mild. Okay, that's heavy.
My arm. Yeah, no, it was sore for a couple of days. And I definitely felt that fatigue. That fatigue was like, I'm gonna go right now and I'm gonna take a nap and I'll see y'all later. Okay, but that was the extent of it. But the crazy part about it, even, because that's just your body's immune system. Like it's like saying, okay, I got to get rid of this. And so our bodies go into that fight mode and it's fighting. And so you will feel that low grade fever. It's just an indication that we are fighting something. And then also your body is saying that you need to rest. And so it's just a normal response, I believe. That's what that's what I had. I did have one friend out of all the people that I've talked to, and these are all medical professionals, because I think like right now, those, the medical professionals, as well as those who are elderly, are the ones who are on the first phase of being able to get the vaccination. And so she had an allergic reaction on her arm. And so, I don't know, if that, like you said, if she was prone to allergies before and she just didn't know, but she was only able to do one dose because of that. But she's the only person I know that had a adverse effect from the vaccination. Everybody else seemed like it was cool.
Dr. O, we do have a question in the comments. The question reads, my husband is getting the shot or the vaccine. Is it okay if I do not?
Is it okay? No. Everyone should get the vaccination. So I would encourage her to follow behind him when it's available. That she also needs to be vaccinated. So that's his protection, but then she's still left without protection. So I would say that doesn't exclude her.
Okay. Why should people take it? Why should they take the vaccination?
So principally, the reason we should take this vaccination is because this is a highly communicable disease that, unlike the flu, is 10 times more contagious and 10 times more deadly. And so for this reason, because this can be transmitted so easily, just a few droplets inhaled, a few droplets, and someone next to you has it. That not only for protection of ourselves, but as we say, we're our neighbor's keeper. In order to protect your neighbors, this would be the most recommended approach to take.
Thank you. Okay. So I got a question for Jackson Dom. Like, based on what y'all heard from Dr. O, is it a little bit more like convincing?
No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. No, okay. I don't need to be convinced about the vaccine. I'm not against the technology of vaccines. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I have every time the doctor says, hey, I think this will be good for you, I take it. I get my my flu shot every single year. So no, I'm not against the medical science of it. My concern and my issue comes into play of the trust. I lost trust, unfortunately, with my authority of my government. So it's going to take me just a little bit more time to gather a little bit more confidence, only because some of the things that we have been told about the virus in terms of the vaccine have been fake news. It was false. It was not good. It wasn't good information, and it came from the absolute top, right? So for me, it's just I just want to get a little bit more trust. I want to kind of get everything to kind of settle down for me, see a little bit more peace, so I can feel a little bit more comfortable to go. It's like I wasn't on the scene. I wasn't born when the flu vaccine was concocted. So, I don't know what took place. This could have been the same type of situation, during that time. But by the time I was born, it was tried and true. Okay. So I'm just working through a little bit of trust issues here, to build myself up to just saying, okay, just go ahead and do it, because, just have a little bit more confidence. But it's not because I don't trust the medical science.
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that when Dr. O told me, like, I think that one of the biggest things, the factors on me deciding to go ahead with it, was the fact that the science behind the mRNA, which I had never heard of prior to, has been researched.
What is mRNA? What is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Dr.
Yeah.
O.
So mRNA is the M stands for messenger, and RNA is a genetic material that turns degraded genetic material into new proteins, active proteins within the cell. And so, essentially, what happens is, as it relates to this vaccine and mRNA, is that the genetic material from the spike protein. I'm going to say spike protein. So, if you think about the coronavirus as like a ball, outside of the virus, on the surface of the virus, are they literally look like spikes. Okay, and those spikes are actually served as the attachment for the virus as it attaches to the cells in the respiratory system. And so these spike proteins, they attach to a receptor that's inside the respiratory airway. And those are called ACE2 receptors, ACE2 receptors. And so those spike proteins start attaching, and they attach themselves and glue themselves. So eventually, the entire inside of the virus, that ball, is able to invaginate or make itself part of the whole. Those are like the tentacles for this coronavirus. They attach first, and then they inject themselves into the host. And so what the mRNA is it's a piece of that spike protein. They took the genetic material from a piece of that protein there, and then they constituted it into a vaccine medication. And so what they did is when you inject that into the body, then the body recognizes that as the spike protein as something foreign. Okay.
Okay.
So that's all the body needs to recognize the entire virus, is just a snapshot, a little piece of this coronavirus, which is the spike protein. And then that mRNA is able to send a message to the rest of the immune system to say, hey, take this back to the data center. Anytime this come back again, we got an army to fight you.
Bam. That's what got me when he said that.
Like, well, when you break it down like that, Dr. O, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's like understanding like how the immune system works, and how that, that mRNA, when he broke that down to me, that makes sense to me. And that this isn't new. This, they've been working on mRNAs for a long time with other diseases. This is just like the first time they'll be able to use it for a virus. and for vaccination. So this is the
Right.
first time we'll be able to see that science will work for vaccination. And so then that made better sense to me than them just rushing something. And not to mention, like, I'm over it. Like, I think that was the other thing. Like, I'm over coronavirus. It's like taking over so many facets of our lives. And, and I know that me just being over it isn't enough. I'm sure there's tons of people that's over it and, that won't get a vaccination or, will continue to do things that they need to do by staying at home and try to wash their hands and all that stuff. But the truth of the matter is, like, if there is something that I can do to help this, go away faster, then that's what that's one of the reasons why I'm thinking about, like, let's see if this will be able to slow this down so people can get back to living their lives the way that, and maybe we will never have normalcy at the rate that we had it before, but, some level. So it worked for me. Like, I was sold on the fact that there's science this science has been researched forever. They're thinking about mRNAs for cancer and other diseases now because they're able to say that, this science is solid. It works.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a comment that says, Dr. O convinced me I will get the shot. Woo!
Yeah!
There we go.
Woo! That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Right.
Because that's what it's about.
Yes.
Like, when you don't know all the facts, if you don't have all the information, it makes it tough, for you to make an educated decision. And so, like, that's all this conversation is for us to, like, just talk about it. And I hope that, you guys, if you're looking at this and this is something that maybe you feel like your mom or your auntie or your cousin, your grandma, like, that they, may benefit from. Because the thing about it is, if their government is putting money out right now for a vaccination and they're actually, allowing some people to get these things for free or discounted, you don't want to be that person that says that, I'm gonna wait. And then it's like, by the time you've waited, now they want to charge you an arm and a leg when it could have been available to you for free. That was something I thought about too. Yeah. Right.
And this will be free.
It will be free right now.
This is a free vaccination. Yep.
All right. So I don't know. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap this thing up? Dom, Jax, or Dr. O?
No, I think I'm pretty good. Dr. O did a wonderful job explaining what the vaccine actually is and why we should not be afraid, that we should actually embrace this and, trust the science that is behind it, regardless if it's rushed or not. I'm gonna go ahead and do my good praying about it, because this is sound wisdom. This really is. This is sound advice. So this is very important. So I am truly going to pray on it, but I cannot say that you did not give me more to think about, because you 100% gave me more to think about and to consider. Because I have to agree with you, April. I am a little bit over the coronavirus as well, right? I haven't seen my grandmother in over a year, my mother in over a year, and they both have underlying conditions, So so the virus is affecting a lot of things and a lot of our lives, right? But I just want to ensure that whatever we're doing it with wisdom, and that we're going to be safe, right? Safety is the goal. Safety is always the goal.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
and I always say follow peace too. I think it's good to ask God about it as well. Like, even though I was able to consult with a good dear friend about this information that he has in his brain, which I'm so grateful for. I also was able to ask God too, like, get a check with peace from God, and I had peace about it. And, there's things that I'm sure that God wants all of us to do in 2021, and he doesn't want us to be bound to fear, And so as we wrap this thing up, guys, I think that the biggest thing that we can take away, the takeaways that we can come from this, where we can shift our mindset, is that first, don't allow misinformation to prevent you from getting this vaccination. Like, get the facts. You want to know all that you need to know, and make sure that it's not some information that's coming from unreliable source. Like, use the CDC. I know that Dominique talked about government and how the information is crazy, but like, we have information that comes from the Associated Press. Like, let's use the information that's coming from reliable sources. Okay. I think the other thing is like, not
April,
to allow fear.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but we had a good question, and I didn't want us to end without addressing this question from our viewers.
Oh, okay.
The question says, and this is for Dr. O, will the vaccination work on the new strands of the virus?
That's a good question.
Yeah, very good question. The verdict is still out. From the latest that I'm reading, it should cover. So, and just a quick kind of layout of how viruses work. Viruses, just like we are trying to stay alive. They don't want to die, just like we don't. And so what happens is over a period of time, sometimes it takes a year or a little bit less, the viruses change their genetic material just slightly to try to evade whatever treatments we're giving it. And so that's just a natural progression of how viruses work. But at the same time, when they change that genetic material, a lot of times they become cause less symptoms. So maybe the infectivity goes up, but then the symptoms that we see are not as severe.
Okay.
And so, because if you think about it, viruses, if they want to stay alive, they need hosts, right? If the virus kills off all of its hosts, then it can't stay alive. So sometimes the viruses will tone down the symptoms that they're causing so that they can keep people alive. It's very interesting how science works. And so with this vaccination, though, what we're seeing is that the spike protein that's on this new genetic variant is relatively similar to the one that we've seen from the start. And so the thought right now, it's still day by day kind of process, but the thought now is that our current 2 vaccines that are on the market now should cover the new variant.
Okay. Well, I guess that makes sense when you explain it that way, because for me, I thought, oh, new strand, this vaccine is garbage. that is exactly what I thought. I'm not going to tell a lie. I said, well, it's going to make no sense for me to get this vaccine if this new strand's popping up. So that makes perfect sense. And I'm glad that question was asked. Yes.
And it's the same with the flu shot, which is one of the reasons we recommend annually, is because influenza A and B undergo mild genetic variations from year to year, and so the various pharmaceutical groups, they make sure that they kind of study those variants to make sure that the vaccination is staying in line with destroying the current strain.
Okay. See, I didn't realize that. And this is why it's so important to educate yourself. Educate yourself. And I guess this takes us to the next takeaway, which was consult your physician.
Yes, consult your physician. Yeah, I think that sometimes we're afraid of doctors. We have the white coat syndrome. Everybody, you get anxiety when you see the white coat. But this is not a time that we should be afraid of the white coat. We need to be like, we're feeling something in our bodies, even if it's not even COVID related or we're not feeling symptoms like that. Just don't be afraid to talk to your doctor. I think that we sometimes consult the Wikipedia for information about our bodies before we go to people who have actually gone to school for years to know and understand the body. And so we should be consulting them about whether or not we should get coronavirus. Not grandma, not auntie, not mama, because sometimes the lens that they may be coming from, may be a lens that brings us to our next one, which may be out of fear, and so don't allow fear to lead your decision. I sometimes think that, fear is one of those things that we don't realize when it creeps in. and being able to recognize that, like, yeah, we may call it wisdom, we may call it being cautious, but are you just, where's the fear coming from? Like,
That's
checking with
good.
God and Holy Spirit on things, because God will guide you and lead you. He knows what's coming ahead of time. And so sometimes it's just a matter of us being able to say, you know what, God, is this okay? And really, if he says it's okay, then you should just go with it. And it shouldn't be fear that's leading your decisions on this. And so, yeah.
I
Anything
agree.
else?
Nothing else for me except truly seriously, we implore you all to take this information seriously, really take this vaccine in the state that we are in globally, take it very seriously. Even if to April's point early in the show, even if you don't personally know anyone who was affected by COVID-19, it still doesn't mean that we should not take this as very seriously as the ones who have been affected or know someone who has had, the virus. We, like always, say thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us for yet another conversation.
Yep.
We love all of you to life. Please like, share, and subscribe. If somebody could benefit from this conversation, drop it in their DM, okay? Share it, share it, share it. Dr. O, we thank you again. We honor you again for your time, for your information, for just being willing and giving. We truly appreciate that. Until next time, everybody, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. God bless you.